Trust your instincts. I know you can do this, Ahsoka.
So, the first 3 episodes of Ahsoka are here. I've rewatched some moments and episodes multiple times so that I could properly analyze the show. There are many good elements, and some bad. The bad moments are frustrating, because many can be so easily avoided, but the good moments are very good. And I didn't realize how great some of these character arcs were until deeply analyzing all the lines and scenes. So on to episode 1. Most of the bad stuff in this episode, aside from problems in the pacing, is from the first 2 scenes and the last scene. The other scenes mostly have more good than bad. So let's start with the bad in the first scene of the show. The lack of competency from Captain Hale, which is this guy. Captain Hale is contacted by an unknown ship trying to come aboard his vessel. The people on this ship claim to be Jedi. Captain Hale does not believe them to actually be Jedi, but Imperials in disguise.
You're no Jedi.
And yet, with a high-value prisoner on board, he simply just lets them come aboard the ship. You know that they are lying about their identity, but you let them on board where you carry a very important prisoner? This level of incompetency will be present in many other moments in the later episodes as well, which we'll cover once we get to episodes 2 and 3. But the scene that follows it, with Baylan and his apprentice, Shin Hati, fighting all soldiers on board and killing them with their lightsabers, feels very much like what Star Wars is supposed to be. It was such a good Star Wars scene, which could have been made perfect if you simply found another way for Baylan and Shin to come aboard. And this is where the frustration comes from, that so much in the show could be made much better by just changing simple aspects of it. Then we move on to Ahsoka at the temple, trying to find this hidden map and then fighting some droids that attempt to intercept her. I think many people have pointed this out already, but the pacing in the first 2 episodes could be vastly improved, and this scene portrays that well. With Ahsoka walking around the temple, it just feels unnecessarily slow. This issue is present in many other scenes later on as well, with characters also taking way too long to deliver their lines. Sometimes a character delivers a line,
I don't know.
pauses, another character responds,
I seem to have abilities like you.
another long pause, then another line.
These days, there are few who can wield the Force.
This just drags the scene. But episode 3 was already a vast improvement on this issue. Now, with Ahsoka fighting the droids, there's 2 things here that are problematic. First, these droids are the same style that attacked Sabine, so they were sent by Morgan Elsbeth to protect the map. Except that they almost destroyed the map themselves when they self-destructed in trying to kill Ahsoka. So this doesn't make sense because their directive is to get the map to Morgan safely, and destroying it would obviously defeat the whole purpose. As a matter of fact, when Baylan and Morgan go to the temple that was destroyed, Baylan says that either Ahsoka has the map, or now it's destroyed and their whole plan is screwed. Morgan says that she believes Ahsoka has the map, and Baylan says,
What if she does? You're lucky.
so clearly their plan would be over if the map was destroyed. Secondly, once they did decide to self-destruct, it was rather too convenient just how long it took them to do so. But seeing Ahsoka cut the floor beneath the droids was very cool to see. It was unexpected to see her outsmart them like that, so props to whoever came up with that idea. Now the third scene is with Huyang and Ahsoka, and I gotta say, I love this droid. He's made me laugh multiple times. He was in Clone Wars, and it's always nice to see less prominent characters from the animated shows show up in live action. It just makes everything feel more connected and real. The line from Huyang about how it is the job of a Padawan learner to watch Ahsoka's back is a great setup for what they will be addressing later on in the episode with Sabine and Ahsoka. I also like how Ahsoka says she didn't follow Jedi protocol when extracting information from Morgan Elsbeth. Ahsoka has had major disagreements with the Jedi Order, which is evident in the Clone Wars animated show. And using unconventional methods is something that Anakin used to do. So I like that this is passed on to Ahsoka since she was his apprentice. So this scene was very well written. Then Ahsoka meets up with Hera to discuss the attack on Captain Hale's ship. I like how Hera is using a thigh holster here because she didn't have one in Rebels, but Kanan did. So I think it is a very nice homage to him and a symbol of how much Hera thinks about him. So for this scene, I heard some unfair criticisms about Hera telling Ahsoka to go to Sabine to figure out the map. I believe you would only make that criticism if you haven't recently watched Rebels, because it is very clear that the most wise person to take this map to is Sabine, and Hera knows it. In Rebels Season 4, while the whole freaking Empire couldn't figure out how the Mortis art painting functioned as the key to opening the world between worlds, Sabine and Ezra did it. Hera and Ahsoka are among the few people that know this. Sabine is an expert at these things, and she has proven to be able to figure stuff out with paintings, maps, and art that no one else could. Therefore, it would have been inconsistent and foolish for Ahsoka and Hera to go to anyone but Sabine. While I have seen some list this as a stupid thing, it is the wisest thing to do if you are to be consistent with the Rebels show. Another good part of the scene is when Ahsoka is unsure of whether Sabine will want to help due to their past history, and Hera says that Sabine will help for Ezra. This is actually an amazing setup of Sabine's motivations, which leads us straight into the next scene, her introduction, where she is getting away from the ceremony supposed to honor the Ghost Crew for saving Lothal. Sabine is not getting away for the sake of just being rebellious. No, the scene right after illustrates why she got away, because Ezra isn't there. When Sabine gets home, she takes the recording Ezra made for her and listens to it again. And we all hear Ezra, just like in Rebels, telling Sabine that he is counting on her to see this through.
I'm counting on you to see this through.
Out of everyone, Ezra made Sabine the one responsible for finding him. And she has failed at doing that, at least up to this point. So Sabine feels unworthy to be honored at the celebration because Ezra Bridger, the one who deserves the greatest honor for it, isn't there, and she blames herself for it because Ezra was counting on her and she hasn't been able to come through for him. This is great writing for Sabine's character, as it doesn't shy away from the impact that the Rebels Season 4 finale has had on her.
Ezra, please, get out of there!
So keep in mind that Sabine's motivations are in relation to Ezra, because this beautifully comes into play again in explaining some things in episode 3, including why Ahsoka and Sabine split up in the first place, and why Sabine says that now she's ready to train again. It all goes back to Ezra. Then we see Morgan at the destroyed temple, where she mentions
the Night Sisters of Dathomir,
which played a role in the Clone Wars show, so it is great to see more of it here. Then we move on to Sabine dreaming about Ezra, where we hear Ezra say lines from the finale of Rebels. Once again, pointing to what Sabine thinks about the most, even in her sleep, Ezra Bridger and her failure to bring him back.
Ezra.
Her motivation for leaving the Lothal ceremony is again reiterated in the next scene where she meets Ahsoka again, and Ryder tells her that they missed her at the ceremony and that everyone was there, to which she replies,
Not everyone.
One thing that could have been better in this scene is the Ahsoka-Sabine interaction. They clearly cut some lines out of here that were in the trailer.
It's been a while.
Things have changed.
And I think that they should have kept them in to make for a more natural interaction instead of Ahsoka and Sabine just awkwardly staring at each other. Then Sabine goes into Ahsoka's ship and looks at her past drawings, which is a nice nod to her artsy side, but disobeys Ahsoka in taking the map out of the ship. This was obviously a mistake, and she will pay for it. It also ties directly into Ahsoka's line when talking to Hera in a couple of scenes later, where she says that even the right reasons can have the wrong consequences.
Sometimes even the right reasons have the wrong consequences.
This is in reference to Ahsoka's past decisions, including leaving the Jedi Order, but also to what will happen to Sabine. Sabine does have the right reasons and intentions. She wants a more peaceful place to think so she can figure out where Ezra is, but leaving the ship will still have the wrong consequences. And so we come into the last scene with Sabine figuring the map out, being ambushed by the droids, and fighting Shin. I liked the fight, but not the fact that Sabine got stabbed. I know that it has been done multiple times before, but I just don't like the idea of anyone getting stabbed with a lightsaber and surviving, because it makes it seem like lightsabers aren't as deadly as they should be, and therefore there isn't as much tension when a lightsaber fight does happen. And this could be so easily fixed by just having Sabine getting injured in a different way. But Sabine losing the fight is important for her future journey. It is the essence of good writing to have a character fail first. So I like that Sabine has trained and still failed, and will now have to train more before attaining success. Another nice part of the scene is the fact that Sabine was the one to challenge Shin to a fight. At this point, Sabine did not yet know about Shin, as she had not seen the hologram footage. She did not know that this person in front of her could fight with a lightsaber, so acting impulsively, she draws her lightsaber first. Then Shin responds to it since she was challenged. Sabine's actress did a good job here, showing Sabine squinting her eyes as she realizes that Shin also has a lightsaber. Sabine is someone to often act impulsively, so this portrays how impulsiveness can have serious consequences. Moving on to episode 2, we start with Sabine having mostly recovered from her injuries. Here, they really should have at least shown more of the process of saving Sabine's life, instead of jumping to a point where her life is no longer at risk. Later on, Ahsoka goes to where Sabine lives. I love how she uses the Force to see more into what happened in Sabine and Shin's fight. Now, a droid stayed behind, so she's able to decapitate it. Now, this doesn't quite make sense either. Why would one droid stay behind? The objective was getting the map. The only reason they got Sabine involved in the first place was to draw Ahsoka out so they could get the map from Ahsoka. But Shin discovers that Sabine is the one with the map now, so she takes it. There's no point in going after Sabine now. It's possible that the droid predicted Ahsoka would come here instead, so its goal was to kill her. But really, one droid left to kill Ahsoka when 5 of them couldn't before? So this just plays as a plot device so Ahsoka can figure out that the droid came from the planet of Corellia. Once they figure out it came from Corellia, they imply that even though Morgan Elsbeth used to have Imperial operations there, no one from the New Republic checked if her operations were dismantled. What? My goodness, their level of incompetency is off the charts. No wonder the New Republic fails and the First Order takes over. Even the workers still loyal to the Empire consider the New Republic to be so stupid that they actually just built this hyperdrive that's supposed to be secret right out in the open. But I am not going to consider this to be bad writing here, because I think that in this case, the whole point is to show why the New Republic will fail. And I believe this to be the case because of Hera's scene with the senators in episode 3, where they clearly show that the opinion of the most competent leaders and fighters are stifled out by the greater number of foolish senators. I think this to be the case in real life too, so this is actually good writing. Now, the hospital scene between Hera and Sabine was very good. It just really flashed back to Hera being like the mom of the Ghost crew. Then we have Morgan Elsbeth unlocking the map, which shows the path to Peridia, a distant galaxy. It is not yet clear whether this map has the exact coordinates of Thrawn or only shows the path to move into this other galaxy. If the former, they will have to explain how a map buried long ago has the exact coordinates to Thrawn's location. But we are delving into uncharted territory here with this new galaxy and going deeper into magic mythology, so I'm sure they will explain more. I love lore and world building, so this excites me because it so vastly expands the world of Star Wars, and I hope to see more of it. I want to explore new parts of this world, but also the past of the world that we are in, like the Old Republic. Lucasfilm, give us the Old Republic, please. Anyway, later on, we have Huyang convincing Sabine to start training again. He mentions that Sabine's aptitude for the Force is lower than any Jedi he ever knew. The language here is important because it's not that Sabine cannot use the Force, it is her aptitude or talent that is lower.
Your aptitude for the Force would fall short of them all.
This is exactly what George Lucas intended it to be. George said that people get confused about the Force, and that the Force is, quote, something you can learn to use. When speaking about the ability to use the Force, he said, if you want to take the time to do it, you can do it. It's just that it was only the Jedi who would take the time to do so, and they had their standards. If you had lower talent, you would not be accepted into the Jedi Order. Midichlorian levels determine how much talent or aptitude you have for the Force, according to George. The Jedi were few because the Jedi Order would not accept people with lower talent, since it'd take more time and training. They only would accept people with a high aptitude for the Force, that is, high midichlorian levels. This is why Huyang says that the Jedi Order would not have accepted Sabine, obviously, but it was Ahsoka's decision to train Sabine, even though she knows it will take more time and training. As Huyang says, she's very unconventional, so I'm glad Filoni is sticking to the roots of what George said it to be, that no, the Jedi Order would not have trained Sabine, but that yes, if Ahsoka is willing to train her, she can learn to use it. Next up is the scene at the control center, where some Imperial loyalists attack Hera and Ahsoka. I've heard criticisms about one of the workers yelling for the Empire, but this criticism comes from the idea that if he hadn't yelled, he would have been successful in accomplishing his mission to kill Hera. But this is not true because yelling didn't stop his attempt on Hera's life. It was Ahsoka's Force sensitivity that did. Ahsoka actually turns and senses the attack before the worker gets out of his chair. With the Force, she was able to sense this coming and stop him. But because it's such a quick line, it does make sense that if you can, you will announce where your loyalties lie, as long as it does not get in the way of him accomplishing his mission, which it doesn't. After he yells, Hera still has her back completely turned to him. Hera only has time to turn around after he is already dead. Him yelling the very quick line for the Empire as he is already taking action would not have stopped him from killing General Syndulla. If Ahsoka couldn't use the Force, it would be bye-bye Hera, mission accomplished. Then we have Hera and Chopper trying to put a tracker on the ship that is getting away. Here we get the classic Chopper from Rebels, which really makes me laugh, and some cool fighting between Ahsoka and Merrick. Also, Ahsoka just casually dodging the lightsaber was very nice, and there's a small parallel here to Anakin doing something similar in Clone Wars. Then we have another parallel, this time between Sabine and Kanan, with her cutting her hair, and then she tells Ahsoka that she is ready.
I'm ready.
This is exactly the wording that Ahsoka used when she was talking to Hera,
She's not ready.
which points towards this being something that Ahsoka said to Sabine before they split up. I will expand on this point when covering episode 3. This leads Ahsoka to pick up Sabine and Lothal in a scene very similar to what happened in the Rebels Season 4 finale. It is not completely clear yet if this is a retcon of that scene or if it is a cyclical scene, as in something that happened twice. I hope it is not a retcon though, because the elements in Rebels are better, such as Ahsoka with the white robe and staff. The last scene of this episode is Morgan directing Baylan to kill Ahsoka, which he is slightly hesitant to do. This is a good scene, and it is very interesting because it shows how Baylan is not fully Sith, in the same way that his lightsaber isn't Sith red, but more like orange. Lightsaber colors serve as symbolisms to represent someone's character, so I'm intrigued to find out more about Baylan's true motivations. Lastly, onto episode 3, which opens up with Sabine's training. This opening scene was very good. It felt very much like Star Wars, with the Jedi training Huyang and the master-apprentice relationship. When Ahsoka knocks Sabine down and says,
Anger and frustration are quick to give power, but they also unbalance you.
it felt like a line from the original trilogy. Ahsoka mentions Sabine still remembering the basics, but it makes sense that she will be rusty in many areas since she did spend years without training or fighting. I do expect her to pick things up more quickly now since she is not learning it for the first time. A great example is when she is at the tail gun of the ship and misses the first shots. She is definitely experienced in fighting space battles, and if this happened in Rebels, she probably would not have missed. But the Battle of Endor and the Fall of the Empire took place in 4 ABY, while the show takes place around 9 to 12 ABY, which means that Sabine spent years without having to engage in any space battle or fight at all against droids or humans. It seems like she did not even put on her Mandalorian armor for so long because there was no reason for her to have it on, and so she lets her hair grow very long. As soon as there is a reason for her to start fighting again, she cuts her hair. And as she eases back into it, she starts shooting the ships down. Then we have Hera meeting with the senators, where they ignore all of her warnings, because of course they do. Even though their military convoy was attacked, their personnel murdered, they got hologram footage of these dark Jedi who rescued a high-value prisoner. General Harrison Duller was attacked by Imperial loyalists. A hyperdrive bigger than any that could be used for a New Republic ship was built out in the open under their nose and was successfully taken by the enemy, and their response is
Outliers.
even with all the evidence and the personal attack against Hera and Ahsoka, one of the senators really said,
They have all taken an oath of loyalty.
You serious?
clearly they do not understand the concept of lying. You know how spies will lie about their loyalty in order to gain access to your secrets and resources so they can further their own cause? But again, I am not making fun of the show here, I'm making fun of the senators. I think the show is intentionally doing all of this to show how the lack of competent leaders is what leads to the fall of the New Republic. I like how we get the mention here of how Hera has a personal quest to find Ezra as well. And oh boy, she really destroyed that senator.
Were you ever in the war, Senator? Just sat back and waited to see who came out on top?
And Jason finally showed up. I was wondering where he was. Him mentioning wanting to become a Jedi is definitely planting the seed for his future journey, particularly because he should have high aptitude for the Force since his father was a Jedi. Then the conversation between Sabine and Ahsoka takes place. The only criticism I have here is that the scene plays too much as if it was the first time Ahsoka and Sabine were talking about this. Yet, this is obviously not the case since Sabine has trained with Ahsoka before. So some lines should have been added here to show that this conversation is being rehashed instead of being something completely new. Sabine says,
Weapons I can handle, it's the rest of it that's a struggle. Always has been.
to which Ahsoka responds,
It takes time.
so this part is good because it sets up that Sabine has already attempted to get in tune with the Force during her first time training with Ahsoka, but that it is something that is difficult for her because her aptitude for the Force is lower than a Jedi's. The part that is weird here is Sabine's question to Ahsoka.
If that's true, then why doesn't everyone use it?
This would definitely be a question that Sabine would have asked Ahsoka when she was first attempting Force training. but the scene plays off as if it was the first time Ahsoka was explaining the Force to Sabine, you know, in terms of talent being a factor, but training determining someone's success. So they should have adjusted these lines here to indicate that Sabine has obviously been taught this before, but that after a while, she's starting to question whether or not it is true that she can use the Force. I believe that Sabine's frustrations is one of the things that played a big part in Sabine and Ahsoka splitting up because of the next scene between Ahsoka and Huyang, where Ahsoka says,
She's frustrated. Still a challenge for her.
to which Huyang replies,
You both knew this wouldn't be easy.
So what was the challenge? Well, Sabine just said it in the previous scene, that even though weapons she can handle, the rest, aka the Force, is still a challenge for her.
Always has been.
So it seems like one of the hardest things in Sabine's training has been her frustrations with the Force, which started to cause a rift between Sabine and Ahsoka in the past. Her frustrations and negative attitude built up until Ahsoka realized that Sabine wasn't ready. Ahsoka even recently said this to Hera in episode 2.
She's not ready.
But later on, Sabine decides that she finally is ready to learn. Since this line of being ready shows up in different scenes with different characters, you can only assume that it was used by Ahsoka to Sabine when they split up. I believe Ahsoka told Sabine that she could train her no longer at that point, and that she could return, but only when she was truly ready. The question is, what makes Sabine ready now? It all ties to Ezra. It is clear that even though Ezra's friends tried looking for him, everyone else came to believe that he died. And as time passed, Sabine started to give up on the idea that she could succeed in finding him. It's almost as if she accepts that she failed, that there is no hope. This feeds into her frustration because what's the point? What's the point of mastering the Force? She didn't have motivation to stick through the training, and therefore no determination or discipline. And as Ahsoka said,
Not everyone can handle the type of discipline it takes to master the ways of the Force.
but now with the map, there is hope. She finally sees a concrete path to completing the mission Ezra assigned to her and finally bring him back. She has motivation again. She has a reason to train. She's ready. Then, most of the next scenes are with the space battle. The Purgles showing up was great. They were very well done in live action. Now the Ahsoka scene in space. If you are not a fan of Rebels and Clone Wars, this scene is not for you at all. It'd probably come off as so silly and goofy you might consider it to be terrible. I am a fan of both of these animated shows, so when I first saw Ahsoka stepping out of the ship and igniting her lightsaber, I actually said out loud, this is straight out of Rebels. I think even the costume design was very intentional here, to make it look like the animated shows, which it did, since it was the first thing I thought of when I saw it. The parallel that I thought of first was Ezra in Rebels Season 3, Episode 22, but this also happens in Clone Wars Season 1, Episode 2 with Plo Koon, and in Clone Wars Season 2, Episode 2 with Ahsoka and Anakin. Then we have the final scene of Baylan sending others to kill Ahsoka and Sabine.
Hunt them down.
He might be avoiding doing it himself because he feels conflicted about it. Once we find out more about his character, then we can dive into why he's making these decisions. Overall, I think this show was really done for Clone Wars and Rebels fans. And I am a fan of these shows, so I am really enjoying Ahsoka despite its flaws, because it is very clearly targeted to the fans of these shows. And sometimes, we don't really get that. But if you are more of a casual fan or a casual viewer, I think your opinion of this show will be vastly different. You will give more weight to its flaws. I'm hoping that with Thrawn's return, it will find a way to appeal to general audiences as well, because he was such a great villain in Rebels. And as Filoni gets more experience in writing for live action instead of animated, I think he will improve his writing. But we'll have to wait for the next episodes to know for sure. I will continue to analyze each episode from now on, from the writing to the character arcs, after each episode comes out. So if you enjoyed this video, leave your like, subscribe to watch my future videos, and share your thoughts down below. I always appreciate the feedback. Thanks for watching and have a great day.